Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on a very special edition of Awaken and Ascend. We have soul-centered astrologer here, Gwenyth Luptak, joining us to give us the fall energy report. You might have been following us along a little bit for the seasons, and fall has so much dynamic energy that we decided to break it up into two parts. So we're going to do an early fall and then a later fall. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Right now, I'd love to welcome Gwenyth back to share with us what is going to be happening in the cosmos. Welcome back, Gwenyth.
Hi, Jennifer. Great to be back, especially after this lovely summer that we were just finishing up. Lovely. I had a lovely time, at least traveling and whatnot as well. So hopefully everybody did. Yeah. So I was just.
The summer in the northern hemisphere where we're at, and of course the southern hemisphere just got out of their winter, so they're opening up now into spring, and having all those good energies. And for everyone, this is really about all of you who's on the conscious path, and what we can do with this cosmic energy, this cosmic support along that path to really be able to use it. So Gwen is here to share some real insightful information on how you can use the planetary body's influences on your path for empowerment, encouragement, and maybe just some interesting perspectives on what you've already been working on. So what are we getting into this fall, Gwenyth?
Okay. So I'm going to talk about three topics today, and we're getting into harnessing the galactic consciousness for healing, release, and evolution, which is always the target. And we'll be dealing with October, the solar eclipse. On the 2nd of October, we have a wonderful partial solar eclipse coming. And then on October 17th, there's a full moon, which has a strong self-empowering potential attached to it. And then finally, I'm going to talk in some detail about a longer-term aspect, Mars opposing Pluto, which starts in the middle of the month and will continue into the new year. So it has an empowering impact following and available for the next few months. Okay.
All right.
So eclipsing old patterns with new beginnings. The solar eclipse's impact on our healthy practices. So solar eclipses are always a new moon event. And the new moon is when the sun and the moon, of course, are aligned. And new moon is about new beginnings. Now, an eclipse has an impact that lasts for weeks into months. It has more impact than the average lunar month, and it's something that will maintain a tone for months to come. Now, eclipses are always near one of the moon's nodes, and the nodes are points on the ecliptic. They're exactly opposite to each other, and that is where the moon crosses over into the ecliptic. And the ecliptic is where all the planets seem to be moving up through the zodiac in the sky. It's the part of the sky where the zodiac is happening. So now, traditionally, eclipses were considered negative events. And that's probably because they get dark when the moon crosses over the sun, and that was a scary event, unexplainable event in antiquity. We know better than that now, of course, and the more contemporary viewpoint is much more positive, and I look at it as really quite a constructive event that we can work with. So a new moon is like a reset. And because the eclipses are always near a node, there is a sense of destiny attached to that, because the nodes in astrology, and particularly in evolutionary astrology, are very important points that have to do with the progress of your soul through lifetimes and what the actual direction is in terms of your evolutionary development. Now, this particular eclipse, solar eclipse coming up, is going to be a south node eclipse, and the eclipse is, rather, the south node is in Libra. So south nodes have to do with our old habits and attitudes and behaviors that worked for us in the past, but we've kind of outgrown them, and they're no longer of value to us. So it's about releasing what is no longer of value to you so that you can bring new energies forward. So that's the nature of a south node. And so the solar eclipse is going to have that character to it. Now it's in the sign of Libra, and Libra focuses on relationships, on maintaining harmony, on fair play, and justice in all its dealings. So that too is going to be part of the quality of what the review and releasing is going to be about for us in the coming weeks. Common limiting traits for Libra are people pleasing, not speaking for yourself, codependency, and avoiding unpleasantness at all costs. Prominent in this eclipse is a strong configuration called the Grand Trine. And Grand Trines are supportive and protective kind of energy. This particular Grand Trine is in the element of water. And water fosters emotional depth and sensitivity in its dealings. And water is also considered a yin, feminine, internally focused kind of energy. So that means that suggests that this Grand Trine is supportive to inner states of consciousness, and that it's really pointing, this eclipse is really pointing to more inner work and inner balancing, well, or protection. That is another way of looking at that. It's kind of twofold. On the one hand, it supports the development of strengthening, calibrating inner states of consciousness, but it's also, if you have strengths, and of course we all do have strengths from our inner state that can be utilized for any challenging situations that might come up. Okay, so the Grand Trine is made up of Venus, Mars, and Saturn. So they're all together supporting each other in a very harmonious aspect. Now, adding to this, there's yet another layer, and the layer is the asteroid or dwarf planet called Ceres, which is strongly linked to this Grand Trine and to the eclipse in general. It has many aspects, challenging aspects to the eclipse, sun, moon, Lilith, and Mercury, as well as the big part of it is Ceres opposes Mars in this Grand Trine. And so that means they are in an antagonistic kind of relationship to each other. Now, Ceres is considered the mother goddess archetype in astrology, and oppositions are about the need to balance and integrate two opposing types of energies simply don't understand each other. So they start out imbalanced, and then it becomes a job of how do they get to understand where each other come from and how do they work harmoniously. So Mars, it represents the action principle in life and the energy of manifestation. Mars also rules the ego, self-interest, and the principle of desire. Mars is currently in the water sign of Cancer. So Mars, even though it's a pretty feisty, ego, self-interested kind of energies in a lot of, it's now, it will be all has been for a while now, and will continue to be in the sign of Cancer for some time. And that just adds more emotional sensitivity and self-reflective kinds of charges to the dynamics that are present, that are likely to transpire. Cancer rules the emotional nature, mothering, nurturing, home, and family matters. And the moon is the ruling planet for the sign of Cancer. So Mars with Cancer opposing Ceres, the mother goddess, is very much the focus is on nurturing, on home, and on family matters, and our emotional impact on things. These are the types of issues that can come forward for this dynamic to be acting out in your life during the eclipse and following. after that. Now, Ceres is considered the higher octave of the moon. And the moon is the ruling planet of the sign of Cancer. So underlying, there's a need to just reinforces the fact, because again and again, we're getting the same themes continuing on, and it's a need for good self-care and for balancing in relationships, learning to update your own personal care, but also how you nurture and care for the people close to you in your life is also a theme that is a part of this dynamic. Now, because Ceres is considered the higher octave of the moon, it brings in the element of the transpersonal or higher frequencies of consciousness, because the higher octave is like the next octave beyond our conscious worlds. So there's the opportunity for more spiritual attunement coming into the mix, and more nurturing that way on a higher pathway for anybody that is on a conscious path. And I expect that anybody that's listening to this is on a conscious path of some kind. Well, then it just opens the doorway to even more opportunity for expansion, shall we say. So Jen, that's not in a nutshell. Is there anything that comes forward for you in this, or
well, it's really interesting to hear all the qualities of Libra, in particular for the beginning there, and then how, all the other influences kind of tie into the same themes too. And I really liked how you gave us some kind of direction on the release, because we always hear, let it go, let it flow, or, let go and let God, or just let it go, or just release this. And there's a lot of talk and emphasis on releasing things and letting go, right? And sometimes, like, let go of what? You're not really sure what it is or what you think you might need to let go. You may have some resistance to that. So having some core themes, I think, gives us kind of a framework and a bit of a structure and direction on, okay, what's going on in those themes that can support the letting go, so that what I can bring in. Right. And then you spoke about the imbalances, right, and how we can restore balance, right? And being able to express ourselves and being able to notice what feels good or not, notice where the codependencies are happening, and and be able to be stronger in our path, right? And in our will, and recognize what's just filling the void and what helps us actually help us find fulfillment. And I think that's a core theme too that runs in relationships as well. So yeah, interesting to hear that that's going to be a big focus. And not to mention, I mean, the holidays are activating enough for a lot of people, right? And in Canada, we have Thanksgiving coming up in October. In the US, it'll be in November, and then we get into Christmas and other holidays that are cross cultures that tend to happen towards the last few months of the year. And that's going to give us a lot of opportunities to kind of see where we are on our path, right? And to bring it back when we're in those situations again, in home and in family and relationships, to see how far along we've come and how to use these tools and influences to be able to be more conscious, to be more aware, and to really come back to what it would take to be in harmony in those relationships and in those situations, and actually celebrate together.
And trust that there's higher forces that are also in alignment and supportive to opening more doors for you to in those newer directions. For sure.
To recognize those open doors. I loved when you mentioned that too.
With Ceres now, just to talk a little bit more about the timeline with her. She has been active in the lunar eclipse that we had a couple of weeks ago in September, and she's been squaring the moon's nodes, actually opposing Mars for quite some time now, but particularly squaring the moon's nodes over the good part of the summer. And so when a planet square is a stressful aspect, and the nodes, as I said before, destiny is an element with the nodes, and we know that the south node is about letting go of things from your past. Then the north node, the opposite node, is where we're headed, where our soul wants us to be headed in life. So when something, a planet is squaring or in the middle of the two nodes, it represents a crossroads or a skipped step that is coming forward, that may come forward for you, that is just underlying the fact that the next step in one's evolutionary path is very much connected with the higher qualities of Ceres and of the moon and the characters that those represent. And Mars, of course, being in the sign of Cancer, just even adds on to even more how much it's important in the pathway to be working with those themes over the coming months. So I have a couple of questions for people. You could ask yourselves in relation to this. And one is, where might you sense imbalances in these areas that might be lying for you? So identifying where any imbalances may be in the nature of the topic is one thing to identify clearly. And then also, how might these energies be negatively affecting your way of asserting yourself in your relationships? With the Libra element, now there'll be some of us out there that are quite strong within themselves, and this might not be that big a challenge. But I think for most of us, we have different things that we may hold back at times that is not always in our best interests. And so now is the time to be working that through more. Okay. So now I'll move on to the full moon on October 17th. So that's the first full moon after the eclipse. And so that makes it a good time to check in to see any changes that you have started to be making, whether they're starting to bear fruit. Because the full moon is always an excellent time to see what's working and what isn't working, because if it's not working, there's still, if there's things that are still not quite jiving and going smoothly, then it's a good time for making adjustments still. There's plenty of time. So in this full moon, there's Chiron, the wounded healer, is in quite a prominent position in the full moon. It's involved in a stressful configuration called the Grand Cross, in which the sun and the moon, Mars and Pluto are all in challenging places with each other. And then Chiron is in the picture very closely to the moon and making difficult aspects to the other planets. So that just adds a tender, repetitive issues that followed you maybe off and on in your life may surface once again for some more review. Can be some tender, even painful dynamics possibly on the emotional front, because that's what Chiron is about. Chiron is the wounded healer. It's the place that talks about very deep wounds, but it's also the place where your deepest awarenesses and your most mature development can come, and your wish, as you heal yourself, first and foremost, your wish to heal others and to teach others and help them on the path is very much a Chiron approach to things. So Chiron is in the picture for sure for the full moon. And then Mars, just to touch base a bit on the Mars opposed Pluto, in the full moon, it increases the intensity because it's a very challenging, irritable, kind of impatient kind of energy when those two planets are not getting each other. And I'll explain that a little more in a couple of minutes, but just to know that it's as far as the nature of the full moon goes, it can just bring intensity and more reactive, possible irritable kinds of moods if things aren't going smoothly. Hair trigger, shall we say. On the plus side, Uranus has many positive aspects, very positive, easy flow connection in this full moon. And the things that Uranus offers is opportunities to try new approaches to things, or even unusual approaches, something that seems to come out of left field or something. Pay attention to those things, because that is Uranus speaking, because Uranus is supporting the more challenging bits that are happening at that time of the month. So, of course, it makes this a good time for eliminating bad habits and trying to change relationship dynamics, of course. And so the challenge of the full moon chart is to facilitate a higher awareness of your own actions and viewpoints, making them more conscious. And the more conscious, that's the game here, is to always try and become more aware of what is going on, more aware of what your own actions are. And with as the consciousness develops, then your actions change and they become more refined. And this can become what's known as an evolutionary leap into, the next stage of consciousness, when one continues to move in that way, Jen. So
yeah. Boy, yeah,
so,
we're really getting tested, it sounds like, right? All of these challenges and opportunities for expansion and noticing what's out of alignment, where to come back into it, and kind of a balance between, taking inspired action and actually taking conscious action based on self-responsibility for the kind of results that we want to see, the relationships we want to have, the kind of work that we want to do. It really empowers our choices, I think, when we can step into that power, right? And take responsibility and its consequences. And then, not to judge or shame ourselves if something didn't quite go right, that was out of alignment, but to just have some awareness around that so that we can make different choices that do feel more aligned and do feel more in harmony with, what we're trying to, who we're trying to be and what we're trying to do, and the kind of relationships that we want to have. So it's a lot of work, but at the same time, it's good work, right? It's the inner work, and it's work to embrace so that we can have the best lives that we can and have the greatest impact that we can,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well said. Thank you.
Thank you. And really, the full moon is like also coming into the fullness of who we are, right? Essentially, and illuminating that path, and it stirs things up, right? It literally stirs up the waters. The waves are bigger at the full moon, and it stirs our emotional waters as well, right? And thank goodness for the waning moon that gives us time to integrate it all.
You need the time to reflect and relax a bit. Okay. Well, I'd like to go now to the Mars opposing Pluto. I'll call it a soulful reboot. So that's the longer term aspect, Mars opposing Pluto. That's starting with the full moon, but continues on until about several weeks into the new year. So Mars it's had the opposition with Ceres, which is important, and then the other one, of course, now is with Pluto. It's a different ballpark with Pluto. Mars opposing Pluto is they both co-rule the sign Scorpio. So Mars was the traditional ruler of Scorpio, and Pluto has, since it was discovered in 1930, has started to take over as well. But they are both considered co-rulers of Scorpio. So Scorpio represents the deep mysteries in life, including the life of your own soul self. And Scorpio represents also the life and death cycle in life and anything to do with transformation. So the process of transformation, which we are always doing in life, which all life is always transforming in some form or another, is the nature of that. It has to do with the Scorpio and Pluto and Mars, to some extent Mars. So Pluto focuses on the intentions of your soul. In evolutionary astrology, Pluto represents the soul in your chart. And Mars then acts on these intentions in the physical world. So there really are two cooperative forces when they are aligned. They need to be for movement forward. These two forces act in a right now are going to be acting likely in a tug of war, because they haven't found their way with each other yet. And this will intensify and amp up the power potentials over the coming months, because the Mars and Pluto are very power oriented as well. The oppositions present implies that there's an imbalance of these two not getting each other and need some kind of rectification. So we need to move forward on that to find a more aligned way between these energies so that you can act on things that you most are seeking in life. So Mars and Pluto in this way speak to a much high-powered energy, which will be available. And of course, these things always, if these links very closely to planets in your birth chart, you will feel it much more strongly than if they don't. But nonetheless, the dynamics are out there for anybody to use when you are mindful of it. Okay. So when these two planets are in harmony with each other, they create very high-powered energy. They're very hard-working duo, and they have great focus, meaning that it would be a great time for making positive changes because they are a very success-oriented duo. And on the other hand, if you're finding, well, okay, things are actually moving pretty smoothly, wonderful, because it can also mean that they are in pretty good alignment for you, and that it then becomes a time of culminating or successful efforts for the work that you already have done. So either way you look at it, it's an aspect that is very supportive to whatever your plans and your hope for directions are. Now, okay, so however, when they are imbalanced, when Mars and Pluto are imbalanced, you will find that for your efforts, there will be resistance from others, for example. So you have this great idea and you're going to be doing something and you take it to work, but people that you work with are thumbs down on it, that kind of resistance, or power struggles in your relationships, or a tendency to be controlled by others, or even to want to control others around you. Those are all indications that Mars and Pluto Pluto particularly is imbalanced, especially controlling, that's a negative Pluto thing, and so is resistance of any kind. Or perhaps you can also, it's also potentially can play out in your environment that somehow is untenable and you have to change your relation to where you are, change your opinions of things. So, okay. Did that make sense, Jennifer?
I think I just need a little bit of clarification there about, the Mars and Pluto opposition, about being opposing forces. So within, what are those influences that would be opposing each other?
Mars is the one that acts on things, and Pluto is the one that is getting the messaging from your soul self in terms of what you most want to be, what you most need to be doing in your life. So an opposition is inherently two opposing forces that don't get each other. And so the notion is to find a harmonious kind of midpoint between them so that they can start to work together instead of working opposite from each other.
Yeah, like how Mars can support Pluto. It's kind of like a create and control kind of battle, and an ego and soul kind of battle, and almost like a masculine feminine kind of battle as well, as in terms of the action and the receptivity and taking inspired action or try to take controlled action. Right. And then you talked about the resistance as well.
Yeah.
And so to heal or to kind of work with that resistance is to discover or be in the place of acceptance, right? And recognizing what's happening. And so is a way of harmonizing them, kind of learning to accept like the situations that are happening, or like the status of a relationship, or what might be happening
well,
there?
okay. Okay. For example, I'm not quite sure what you're saying, but resistance. So you have a plan for something and you're finding that your partner or whatever is very resistant to it.
Yeah.
So that's a flag to say, okay, there's something about the way this is transpiring that is not actually in alignment with my highest. And I might not know right now, but I guess I need to, if I want things to go in proper alignment, then it does require some reflection and some honest reflection on what it might be that isn't working the way you would like it to work, or the way you expect it to work. Does that help at all?
Yeah, it's because sometimes that resistance could just signify what's out of alignment, like you're saying, and then the acceptance is accepting the fact that it's not working, that it's not aligned. Sometimes we can't force something to work or go our way, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Unless we work together
yeah.
in some way to be able to co-create that harmonious balance and relationship with it all. Yeah.
A lot depends on the circumstances, whether it's something that is you can change your an approach, and then that sort of makes things, or reassurance of some kind that makes the situation work well, or whether it's just something so untenable that you just have to say, okay, this relationship, for example, is no longer working for me. Because I can't be paid in that kind of thing. So the intensity of the situation.
Yes. Yeah, the intensity and also the friction, right? Like the friction is what's created as well in those opposing forces, and then that friction could be catalyzing, right? Or it can be creating changes, right? So in any platform of life, it sounds like that friction can either catalyze things and be like in the flow, as you were saying, like it could appear that everything's just, kind of falling into place, it's moving in a good way, and really catalyzed by the energy that's creating those opposing forces. Or it could be, creating more of that resistance and need for change in some way.
Right. So when Mars and Pluto are in alignment with each other, so in other words, so when the soul force is in a healthy communication with the action process, that Mars being the action process in life that makes things happen, then it becomes a very high-powered, straightly aligned, hardworking, clear focus kind of energy in which you can make real successful progress in your life. And it's even possible, I mean, that it's certainly possible out there that if things are already really moving smoothly for you, and there isn't the Mars and Pluto is in alignment in your life, then it can be definitely a time of culmination and success for the efforts that you've already put in to the flow of your work. However, when these two energies are imbalanced, then there's a lot of resistance energy. Pluto is resistive to change, even though Pluto is the actual force. That's the irony of it. Pluto is the actual force of one's soul desire to move through your life and head towards the highest potential and the change. However, when things are not flowing well, there's resistance that comes into the picture, and that can take the form of since we know it's South Node Libra kind of energies out there, is power struggles in your relationships, or a tendency to be controlled by others, or even for you might actually be the one that wants to control others around you. Control is a negative Pluto kind of, negative Mars kind of issue. When a person is completely aligned with their true path, there is no need to control others. Things flow, and you are clear about what your destination is. And then the other possibility is that even your environment might show that there's resistance to what your efforts are. So a lot just depends on where the individual is at and what they are moving forward into their lives at any given time. So hopefully that kind of fills out the Mars-Pluto opposition a bit more, Jen?
Yeah, it really does. Thank you so much for clarifying that.
Okay, you're welcome. And so just a quick summary of what I've covered today. So it's the October 2nd solar eclipse is coming up. Eclipses are about, solar eclipse is about a new vibrational change that you'll be moving for. We collectively will be moving forward in the coming months. And this particular one has a grand trine in water, which is a very stabilizing, internally operating kind of energy that's very good for self-reflection and adjusting emotionally if there's anything that needs that kind of realigning. And Ceres is the caring, nurturing energy, and it also has the higher component, higher octave spiritual evolutionary potential to it. And it is versus the Mars self-interest kind of energy that, but you put the two together and you can get things done when they are in harmony together. So the full moon, the October full moon has got Chiron is an added piece in there, which has the stressful aspects to the full moon, sun and moon, as well as Mars-Pluto opposition. So that adds the possibility of stressful circumstances, a little more emotionally charged kind of energies, and repetitive issues may surface once again for realigning. Mars, and then there's the Mars opposing Pluto starts to make itself known during the full moon. And that is going to link up. Also is a reactive kind of energy when it's not working well together, increases the intensity because those two planets are very charged energy together. And then Uranus has lots of positive flow energy, and it's helping with the opportunity to give a new direction and unusual approaches to anything. So certainly if that, that's a flag that if those kinds of things come your way, to maybe pay more attention than you might normally, because it actually is, spirit trying to help. Then the Mars opposing Pluto, which is a soulful reboot that is going to run from about the full moon through to later January of 2025. And it's when properly managed, it's very successful, a strong movement towards your desired callings. And Pluto focuses on the intentions of the soul. Mars acts on these intentions in the physical world. When Mars and Pluto are in alignment, then Mars gets the message from Pluto directly, and the two of them can move in alignment quite clearly together. So it's a very success-oriented combination. They're a transformative, high-powered team when they're harmonizing well together. And the opportunity that it provides is to increase your consciousness to the next level this fall. And success in your endeavors. So that's pretty cool.
Doing what it takes to level up. Lots of dynamic changes. Yeah, lots of dynamic energies and full charge ahead. It sounds like, right? Like it's like a fire's been lit under, but and also within. So very cool, very cool. Super excited. And this is only part one. This is only the first part of fall. So be very interesting to see what comes next. And we'll do a follow-up episode on that for sure. Thank you so much, Gwenyth, for doing all of this. I know it takes a lot to be looking at all these charts. And I appreciate that you talk about Ceres as well, because not a lot of astrologers do actually. They talk more about the ones that we're a lot more familiar with, and so I love that you bring that into perspective as well, and do it always from such a soul-centered approach, and in the harmonics and supporting us on the conscious path of evolution. So I really appreciate you. Thank you, Gwenyth, for being here and sharing all these insights with us.
Thank you, Jen. It's always a pleasure, and thanks for letting this come to pass.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd like people to the opportunity to be able to connect with you. So of course we'll have Gwyneth's links in the bottom to be able to connect with her on Facebook and on your website as well, which has a whole host of offerings. So we'll make sure we have that link in there. And yeah, so then I look forward to the next time when we talk about the second half of this dynamic season. All right. Thanks you all for tuning in. And I hope you enjoyed this special episode, and we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.